Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Right Wing Rico, Safe and Effective Podcast. Today is Sunday, February the 9th, and we're still all recovering from the USAID scandal that has barely just begun. The next things that are going to be audited are the Pentagon, the Federal Reserve, but the big boy, in my opinion, the biggest fraudster of them all that has to be audited, but I don't know if they will because of Musk and his connection, is the actual U.S. government from what I can discern from looking at everything, which is NASA. The company that gets over 60 million per day from the U.S. government and generates nothing. Rockets that go nowhere now that Musk is taking control over. And all NASA does is give us crappy CGI from 30 years ago. And they pretend that they're looking off into space. They're not. Where's all that money going? There's no astronauts. There's no space station. Where's it going? But this is alexandermercourisreal and alexandermercouris. One is in the UK. The other one's in Greece. And I wanted my audience to hear what people outside the United States are thinking. So we're going to go ahead and listen to them, bring up the topic of USAID and how it infected. In my opinion, it was like a cancer, a virus. It infected the world, a mind virus, and it controlled your media, and it had people everywhere thinking that every time there was a protest, it was real. Newsflash, none of them were real. They were all fake. Everything is fake. Our entire perception of reality of our own country and around the world is fake. That means everything we think we thought about what was going on was fake. The protests about police brutality, the protests about joining the Ukrainians joining Russia, the protests about in Bangladesh about the food, but saying they want a new government. Protests everywhere. Think of anything you've ever seen to protest. The protest down in Brazil against Bolsonaro. Well, now they have that other weird guy in power. All of it was fake. None of it was real. And they explain how. Let's go over. This is what USAID. I mean, I know you keep seeing it on the news. You don't understand what's really happening. It means that they use the media to create an entirely new reality around the world, pretending that people were upset. Remember when Klaus Schwab said, prepare for a more angrier world. The world is angrier. Klaus Schwab just said, prepare for me to have World Economic Forum control over all media around the world via having control over the United States USAID. Remember, Klaus Schwab is above Joe Biden for the last 4 years and Kamala Harris. Everything they did was top-down orders from the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab. The USAID was under them. It was an arm of the CIA. Why do you think we pulled out of the World Health Organization? We're pulling out of the World Economic Forum. We're pulling out of all that because the United States will no longer cede control to these foreign psychos in other parts of the world that are trying to create a false reality. You really think that your kids are gay? You really think that trans people are real people and yada, yada? That's all just media manipulation. And it was all presented to you by the USAID, Agency for International Development. Nothing to do with giving aid to people, feeding the homeless, saving South Africans from contagions or anything like that. It was all about control over the media to convince you of whatever reality they want you to see. Unbelievable. It was all fake. Fraud.
USAID. In other words, it was run by USAID and the people who ran USAID. In other words, the neocons. So a lot of people took all of that information by this so-called organized crime corruption reporting project seriously. And then we know who was really producing all this information and who was doing it. And, we now have information about how the protests in Bangladesh just a few months ago were organized we've now learned so much that, how 90% of the media landscape in Ukraine was about what was really going on in all sorts of places. And the fascinating thing, and the really disturbing thing in some ways, is the way in which all of these things start to intersect and interconnect with each other. So it now turns out that the first Trump impeachment, the Vindman impeachment, if I can call it that, was based on a report that was put together by the Organized Crime and Reporting Project. And we now know who exactly was behind that. Everything connects together.
The Organized Crime and Reporting Agency was an agency that drafted up a report saying that Trump was colluding and taking orders from the Kremlin and Vladimir Putin. Guess who funded that crime report against our president? You guessed it, USAID. So what that tells you is that it's what Bill Clinton said is true. There is a government inside of our government that the president does not control. That is the deep state, and that's what we are now cutting the head off of and getting rid of.
And because it was a kind of next step agency, it was outside the formal structures of the US government. It was resisting apparently providing information to Congress. It was hardly under the control of the president. It didn't require authorization from the president himself to do all sorts of things. And of course, it could operate in the United States itself.
What does that sound like to you? Doesn't answer to the president, can operate inside and outside of the United States, doesn't have to answer to Congress. That sounds like Spectre or Hydra. That sounds like the shadow government, the deep state that everyone said did not exist. You work in the government, but you don't answer to anyone. You can work inside of the country and outside of the country. That sounds like it's even above the CIA. This is the shadow government, and it's all coming out. Everything we thought over these years that everybody said was a conspiracy theory wasn't true. It absolutely all turns out to be true. Everything you think about what's going on in the world is fake. Everything on the news is fake. The reason I say it's fake, people are reporting the news on inorganically generated outrage. Klaus Schwab was wrong. You don't got to prepare for an angrier world. The world is not angry. If USAID has to fund protests all over the world, that means all over the world there were no protests going on, and people were generally happy around the world. That means that gives me a positive outlook on reality. You know, you see all these protests, people burning stuff. I live in Germany. So when I would go back to Germany, sometimes there'd be fires and people burning stuff down. But me and my friends, we go out to clubs, we go party, we go drink and go eat every day. I know all types of people. I don't know anybody that's down there at protests throwing stuff at the EU buildings. What do people have lives? Like, we don't know who these people are doing all these protests. I'm in Los Angeles before I had to evacuate. I'm watching mobs of people walk down the street on Spring, right at 7th Street. And I'm thinking, oh my God, look at all these people. I run over there and I'm jumping in the crowd. I want to be like a part of this. And I'm like, well, where's everybody going? But all these people are on the same page. I realize I don't recognize one person in the crowd. I live in downtown LA. I'm from LA. I grew up in LA. I know all kinds of people. I didn't see a soul that I recognize. Then they were saying, eat the rich. And we're smashing up nice cars. I got a nice car. I'm like, well, who's organizing this? Like, how did you get this many people together in LA? Don't people have stuff to do? People sleep in. People have, who's paying for babysitters? And then you find out that these people are paid to come into your area from other parts of the country and protest. And that's the thing. And you think it's organic. You think these are real people, regular people using their own time and money and resources to come down here about a good cause. And you are absolutely wrong. I was wrong. I'm a layman. I was a normie who just thought that it was all organic. People are mad about police killing people. They kill 1 million black people every year, right? Wrong. Lies. But even if that was true, they still would not get regular people to go out there and risk going to jail and risk their lives to protest. People were paying you to go do it. They're not paying us regular people. They have some people that are just professional protesters, and that's all they do. They don't have a job. They don't do anything else. They just go out and protest. Now we know how they could afford to do so and not do anything else.
And it did indirectly. And it played a major role over the last couple of years in US politics. And we're now finding out how it was doing that. It's astonishing. It appears to have been, I mean, the way I would describe it is a gigantic slush fund run by the deep state and various people connected to it.
A slush fund worth about, what are they saying, 50 billion a year? That means USAID was giving out $1 billion a month or more all over the world. All over the world. Do you know what $100,000 does in a average Latin American country or an Eastern European country, or matter of fact, anywhere in the world? Do you know how much money that is? Do you know how much influence and power a small amount of money to us might be to a country in, Central Asia? The only countries we were not able to successfully do regime change in are countries that were closed. They're closed to American banks. That's, oh my God, think about it. The countries we want to invade are the only countries where they do not have Federal Reserve access. There's no central bank. So they wanted us to invade Iran, China, and Russia. Those are 3 countries that are closed countries. The only thing you know about what's going on in those countries is what they've decided to tell you. There's no American banks in Canada, but they're open society. But there's no American banks in China, Iran, or Russia. If they can get their banks in there, their banks can give out loans and pay people to do protests. But they don't just allow immigration from all over the world to come in there, because you would have to bring people from outside the country in most of these places to pay them. Don't get me wrong. They were able to funnel money to Navalny, but now Navalny is deleted. There is no more Navalny, but they did try to do this color revolutionary BS in Russia, and it didn't work. So that's the thing. If they can get their banks into your country, they can get their money into your country, then they can overthrow your government. Because that's all you got to do is just pay people to go out there, and it would seem as if the will of the people is for a new regime to take over. And it happens everywhere, and they've been doing it to us here, even in the United States, which is unbelievable. It's crazy. Everything we thought was fake. Everything we thought was real was fake. I'm still in shock about it. I don't know what to believe anymore. I don't know what I thought was one thing was really another this whole time, and it's all going to just come out. We thought 2024 was going to be the year of transparency and revelation. Yeah, right. We're starting off 2025 with a bang.
Giant money and information laundering scheme, if you can call it that.
Absolutely.
Entity.
Well, somebody I know has a friend of mine compared it with Spectre. You know what I'm referring?
Yeah. It's actually quite correct. Is the United States the most corrupt country in the world, given all these revelations?
Well, no, and I'll tell you why.
That's the thing. Is the United States the most corrupt country in the world? I would say no, because the United States is giving out the money but you have to take it to be corrupt. Now, there are people within our country that are taking it, but it's not our government being controlled by another government with our own money. However, we are controlled by the Federal Reserve with the money that they loan us in a way. But I don't know. We're going to see how it goes with the Trump auditing the Federal Reserve, and then we can decide if the United States is corrupt and if the Federal Reserve is really in charge of the world and not the United States. But for your country to be considered corrupt, that means that another country can pay you to do whatever they tell you to do. That's corruption. When you're for sale, that's corruption. I don't know if there's another country that can buy us as a country. Corporations can buy us. The Federal Reserve is not federal. It's a private corporation. It's the Federal Reserve is just as federal as Federal Express. It's just as federal as Western Union. Like those are, or federal, or FedEx. It's not an actual federal agency. It's just the name. So that's why. So the United States can find out which countries are corrupt because we're going to find out who we can pay for their influence. But I mean, think about it. Who was worse than the Ukraine? I mean, they actually sold us their men that we sent into blenders and meat grinders for the past 2 years. They've lost, what, 3 generations of men? While we're sitting over here still going to clubs, parties, watching football games, having Super Bowls, living regular life, their men are right now being forced onto front lines, into battlefields where they're just being deleted every single day. So, I mean, that's true corruption. Now, when another country can pay the United States to send our troops to go and just get melted away by another country just for some money, we're being sold to go get melted, then that's corruption. But we're not there yet. But but in the Ukraine, that's why the Ukraine will never be in the EU. It will never join. It can never be in NATO. But thankfully, there is no more NATO now. You just don't know it yet, but NATO's gone. NATO's over. NATO's being splintered into the wind, just like the CIA, just like the USAID. There is no more NATO because the US is NATO.
There is no other country in the world where money is being used on this kind of scale in that kind of way. And of course, it was corrupting academics, journalists. It was distorting science.
When he says distorting science, he means when it came to vaccine information. Yeah, you could pay doctors and scientists to tell you whatever studies they just make up. That's true corruption. And did we use that science to convince people to join medical experiments worldwide that are now just wiping out vast portions of our own American population and nobody's talking about it? Absolutely. Why do you think I'm making these videos? I'm making these videos because a lot of your favorite people that are on TV right now that report news and do, journalism, they're not going to be alive in the next couple of years because, well, the companies they work for had something called mandates that if you had more than 90 employees that work for your company, you had to comply with. And if you didn't, you were fired. Joe Biden did it back in 2021. I believe the last date to get those injections was December the 9th. And that went for NFL, NBA, any companies that had over 90 or 100 employees. Those people are walking around, but they are already gone. And there is going to need to be someone to replace them. So that's why I'm throwing my hat in the ring ahead of time, practicing how to use these systems. I'm going to get a better setup soon. And, just because there's going to be an opening. I don't know if you guys are keeping score, but these people are dropping like flies every single day. If you watch a Safe and Effective Instagram page or my Club Rico podcast page, I do share a lot of them. And I explain to people when they tell you the cause of death, because they shared a lot on the Daily Mail in the UK, and it'll tell you the cause of death. And I explain to you how this cause of death is actually one of the causes of deaths. That's a reaction, a side effect, or one of the intended reactions, in my opinion, of what they had to do back in 3 years ago. I can't say it specifically because we're on FluffTube. But a lot of these people are going to be gone, and you're going to need someone like myself who's going to be able to explain to you what happened to them. But also what's happening around you, what's going to happen in the future. Someone's going to need to talk to you. So that's why I'm here. So if you're watching now, this is early. I'm just trying to give you information because people you listen to today will likely not be here tomorrow because there was a depopulation agenda. The USAID helped push forward their depopulation agenda by convincing you that the entire world was with going on. So, but if that's the case, then that means they were lying about the numbers. If the USAID was controlling the media, and the media told me that 80% of the world took it, 82% of Americans took it, and only 18% of us didn't. What if the media was lying to me just to convince me that I was crazy and I should just join the crowd, but I'm not a follower. But for people that are followers, they probably just went along with it because, well, the media said they should. Now I'm starting to think, because of this whole USAID scandal, what if it's more like 50% of us took it? 45. I do know a lot of people that did. I know a lot of people that didn't. So we're going to have to come back and revisit this topic, actually, because now that the USAID scandal came out, a lot of this information we thought we knew, we got to re-question it. And this is beautiful, because my personal slogan is question everything. I question everything. I don't take anything for face value anymore. Not after what I saw back in 2020 with the mask. Never again.
We're involved in everything.
Going forward, how does this affect the United States' soft power, its information power, where it's so dominant in the information space around the globe? How does it affect its soft power? How does it affect its power to create the dynamics for protests and for color revolutions and for regime change? How does all of this get affected now going forward? Because USAID is going to get scaled down.
Yep.
It's pretty much non-existent.
Yes.
From 15,000 employees to like 200 employees now. And it's going to be folded underneath the State Department. Look, it's people rebranded, folded under the State Department, whatever. It's gone. It's pretty much gone.
It's gone.
But it doesn't mean that the information power goes away. It doesn't mean that the soft power goes away. It doesn't mean that the ideas and the initiatives from the deep state, whatever is going to remain for regime changes, is going to go away. I mean, how is all of this going to be affected now?
Well,
I would say that the blind trust would go away. You can still pay people to do things, people that you're giving the money to directly. You can pay them to do anything. It's just that the people around them who they can normally influence, but they're not paying, they're going to question it, because it's going to go one of two ways. Either they're not going to trust what you're saying, even though you're the money guy, they'll do what you say, but they don't trust it. Or now you're going to just have to spread the money around and pay everybody. No more one source receiving the money and then they dictate what's going to happen and yada, yada. No. You're going to have to pay everybody off, because these are people that need the money. They're in corrupt countries. And that goes across the board. The only way you're going to be able to do influence now, you're going to have to pay individuals, everybody, to go along with it, because no one's just going to go along with it anymore. It doesn't make sense.
If this remains, forever, provided USAID really is closed down, which I think it will. I mean, it effectively has been. And my own personal view, by the way, is that eventually we will get an executive order closing it down, and I think that it will survive any legal challenges. That's my own assessment. So I think it will eventually be closed down, provided nothing is put in its place that ends up doing the same sort of things. Provided these kind of operations end, then we will get a sharp change in the way in which US soft power operates around the world, because this extraordinary covert activity that it has been engaged in, this manufacturing of narratives and all of that, that will stop, or at least it will not be continued in the same way.
Well, they did more than that. They manufactured outrage. They wanted you to believe everyone around you was angry, so you should be angry. And every now and again, they would have some regular people that would join these protests because they seen other people there. But when they get there and they're trying to make friends and talk to people, they can't get their phone numbers. They can't get their social media. And people are like confused, like, well, who are you people? Where do you live? Like, you go to these protests and you're like, who are these people? where are they from? Or do we go to the same school, the same high school? We're in the same area. And you find out they're from somewhere, 5 or 6 counties away, 3, 4 states away, or now 5 or 6 countries away, brought in for the purpose of convincing you that that the locals were upset about something and wanted change. And nobody ever did.
Now, that will be an entirely good thing. And it will be an entirely good thing for the United States. Because what we have seen over the last 15, 20 years is the way in which these narratives, which then are created and are then imposed, and we've seen how they've been imposed, by the way. I mean, including, it turns out, pressure on, the big internet companies, all of that. Once that ceases, once we don't have not only narrative construction, but narrative enforcement, then the United States might start returning to a more reality-based, more grounded foreign policy than we have seen. Because what has happened is that all of this narrative construction, all of this manipulation of information, all that it has done is that it has meant that US policy has increasingly become unmoored from reality. And we saw that with the forever wars in the Middle East, and we've seen this with the Ukraine crisis.
How does the world react to all of this? Because and outside of the collective West, or the EU, which are vassals, and vassals are going to act like vassals, but I'm talking about the rest of the world, the global South. How do they react as they watch on, as they look at all of this being revealed? Because the United States, over the years, especially over the last 4 years under Biden, they would lecture a lot. They would actually have summits and events about how they were the beacon of democracy. And
Well, I can tell you a little bit about how I think they're going to react. First things first, rounding up and arresting citizens for peacefully protesting is one thing. Rounding up and arresting paid agitators who are there to push agendas from other countries and other organizations that are basically trying to uproot and change democratically elected governments. Rounding and arresting those people is a completely different animal than rounding up and arresting your local constituents. Now that it's public that the people that are out there protesting are not your people, they're paid to be out there. Well, now you can do them any kind of way you want to, because you're going to have to drop the hammer and teach them a lesson. Do not send your paid protesters here anymore. We don't want them. But now it's out in the open. Before, they were scared because, like, man, you're going to go arrest teachers and janitors and the people that keep your society going, because that's what you're thinking are showing up to the protest. Now that they know there's paid agitators who are there, drop the hammer and arrest them all. They're not even there they're there because they're paid to be, not because they're real people. So now you can treat them different. That's exactly what I would do, and that's how I think that the global South and any administration worth its weight in salt, that's exactly how they're going to treat people. They have to, because these are not your people no more. They're paid agitators, which is really a step away from being a terrorist. What is terrorism? When you inflict violence or you use other means for political agendas. This is like a step away from being a terrorist, is a paid agitator.
And free speech and freedom of the press and all of these things. And the journalists were of the highest integrity, and their publications were of the highest standard. And you guys in Russia, you guys are state media, propaganda, Kremlin state media. And in China, you're Beijing propaganda state media. And all over the global South, everyone is state media and propaganda, but us, we have the journalists that are the most fair, that are the most objective, the publications that are the most fair. How does this affect how the world looks at the U.S. now?
Well, bear in mind that outside the collective West, everybody in the world, I literally mean everybody in the world has known the truth about this for a very, very long time. But now they've been given proof and evidence of this from the United States itself. So if a future Secretary Blinken rocks up and starts lecturing, any country, they can always come back and say, well, you're talking to us about free and independent media, but you don't practice it. We now see that you actually run the media in the United States. You run the media outside the United States, across the West. You are exposed by the revelations that have happened in the United States itself as hypocrites. And that obviously is going to put the United States in the future, if it tries to revert to these kinds of practices, at a disadvantage. Now, I think the mood in the global south, the mood around the world, as they see all of this, is firstly surprise that this is happening. And Trump and all of that would, expose this sensibly, because that's what it is, to the extent that it has been. And I think that has come as a surprise. I think, nonetheless, they are still saying to themselves, and this is true, I suspect, in every world capital, in Brasilia, in Johannesburg, wherever, in Moscow, obviously. They say to themselves, well, is this for real? I mean, will this stick, or is this just a campaign? Will it go on beyond Trump? Is this really a big, big shift in American policy, or is it just something that is a pushback by some people, but it will eventually lose momentum? That the deep state forces in America will be assert themselves, and things will go back to the way they are. So there is a degree of caution at the moment. But if it does,
well, let me see. Right now, the FBI is being purged of anybody that participated and went after January 6th peaceful protesters that walked into a government building that Wednesday of January 6, 2021. What that's doing is that's clearing the way for when Kash Patel becomes nominated. There's none of these people that are still in the government that are anti-American, who are pretty much going to be able to stop or to sabotage any of the things that are going to be going on going forward. They're getting rid of those people. So the deep state requires the law enforcement end to protect them, because those are the men with the guns, the FBI agents, the CIA agents. Those are the people that make up the law enforcement. Once the corrupt law enforcement agents are gone, then the weapons, the security aspect of the deep state is gone as well. So they won't be able to just regain power and come back. They're being purged. They're not going to be here anymore. They're not going to have their security clearances are being removed. They're no longer going to have access. This is actually reminding me of when Musk bought Twitter and he removed all the bad actors. He gave everybody a few days to decide if they're going to work there, to prove that they can work there or whatever. And he purged and got rid of, 80, 90% of the staff? They're doing the same thing right now with the American government, and it is beautiful to see.
Lead to a fundamental big change, then actually, I think it will improve relations between the United States and the rest of the world, because people think that finally the United States generally is out of the regime change game, which, as I said, I don't think anybody at the moment assumes. But if they ever get to the point of thinking that, then people will be able to say, well, we can now interconnect with the Americans. We can relate to the Americans in a completely different way.
Well, yeah, think about it. If regime change operations are going to cease around the world, then that means Russia will finally be an ally or a partner with the United States. They should be our number one ally, actually. We have more in common with Russians than we do with Europeans. We have more in common with Russians than we do with Asians or Africans or anybody else. Actually, if you think about it, Russian territory is probably just as close to our territory as Mexico, because where Russia's country lines in Alaska with the United States, we share a border. So we really should. And then also, as far as what we believe as Americans, remove the whole campaign to get us to believe that everybody is trans and gay for the past, I don't know, 15 years. If you remove that, then our society and Russia's society mirror, just different languages. We believe in protecting our homeland, our way of life. We believe in protecting children from pedophiles. We don't believe in, all this weird gay stuff. Neither do the Russians. The Europeans absolutely do, especially if you find out what was going on back in Weimar, Germany in the 30s. And, you look at the Italians, you look at the UK. But then again, some of that stuff could just be fake protests to make you, the media is convincing you that it's widespread over there. I'm just talking about the nuts and bolts of the American people are more similar to that of the Russian people than I can say any other nations that I can think of. We believe in the same things. We're religious people. We believe in God. We should not be enemies with them. And without the media telling you that they're our enemy, we no longer will be our enemy. And without America trying to overthrow their government using the media and potential color revolutions, or using the Ukrainians, because using the Ukrainian media to radicalize Ukrainians into fighting in this ridiculous war, basically committing, the self-deletion, then there will be no fight with the Russians. And we can normalize relations now that this is all being dismantled. We're even going to, I believe, without the media manipulation, we'll open up communication with North Korea. They will no longer be an enemy of ours, because think about it, everything you know about North Koreans and how they feel and their sentiment. They never told you that. The media, your television told you that. The media convinced you of that. And you just believed it because, I don't know, Brian Stelter or Anderson Cooper told you that it was true. Imagine that. Look at the kind of people that we're taking our information from. Look at their lifestyles. That's who you want to trust and believe? No. You have more in common with me, if anything. You should listen. If you're going to listen to somebody, listen to me. At least you can ask me questions and we can go over stuff. You can't ask the TV anything. It's not going to talk back to you. At least I'll talk back to you.
To the way that we have done in the past, we can start to make deals with them. We can start to agree things with them without having to worry all the time that the NGOs that they're backing in our country are trying to overthrow us. So it would make a radical change in international relations, and one which over time would work to America's advantage. But we'll have to see, because that's my view, and I have no doubt of it, by the way. I'm absolutely sure that this is the case, that all of these activities, regime changes, color revolutions, narrative creations, bankrolling media outlets, launching bogus corruption investigations, none of that has worked to America's actual objective benefit in any way. Ending it is the best thing the United States could do to itself. I've no doubt of it. But there are all sorts of people in Washington, we can name some of them, who are going to push back and argue otherwise.
Yeah, because the money's really good.
Because the money's really good
now as well. I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
Even if the regime change business continues in the United States, at least we're not going to have any of these debates like we used to have with, for example, the protests in Hong Kong or the Maidan, where you do have a part of the media and the population who says, no, these are real protests. It's grassroots, real protests from people who really want democracy and all of this nonsense. At least now we'll be able to say, okay, this is 100% sponsored, not only by the United States, but by the U.S. State Department, because effectively they own it now. Yeah. So, I mean, we're not going to get into any of these debates, this confusion about what's going on here with these 300 people camped out on some square in some country calling for the government to be removed. Everyone's going to know
Absolutely.
that this is a regime change.
How many times have we heard that such and such, this many people are camped out in the square in this country and they're demanding a revolution, they're demanding regime change, they want a new president, they want this. How many times have we heard that? How many times have we heard that here? Imagine what we're hearing around the world. They wanted you to think that the world was angry and everybody on earth wants to live like us. No, they don't. Everybody wants to have men dressed as women reading books to little kids. Everybody wants to have men who are pretending to love each other, adopt kids that they're going to groom into being sex slaves. No, everybody doesn't want to live like that. We don't even want to live like that. The television tells you want to live like that. But in reality, when you go outside and touch grass, nobody you speak to will tell you they're okay with it. But on the internet, the sentiment in the media, and the internet, which is a reflection of the media, the sentiment tells you that it's all true. And that's what's going on. And it's not. None of us agree with it. None of us want to live like that. And without USAID funding, all of these movements, all of these grifts, all of these pushes for all this to normalize all this nonsense, it's all over because it was all artificially, it was all artificial in the first place, paid for. It's over now, which is great.
Even, and this is where I want to get to, even if the EU continues the regime change operation, this damages them as well.
Absolutely.
This carries over to them as well.
Absolutely. I think an important thing to say about all of this, all of these activities, is that they drive coaching forces through international law. I mean, this massive, absolutely unembarrassed interference in the internal affairs of every country, everywhere, all the time, is completely contrary to the entire ethos and doctrine of the UN Charter of International Law and all of that kind of thing. So it's been exposed. People can now see it. And as you absolutely rightly say, we could talk about these things without any kind of embarrassment any longer.
Yeah, or any doubt.
Or any doubt.
I appreciate Alexander Mercouris and alexanderchristoforou for helping clear this up for me and my audience. We do care about what people think outside the country. We just want to hear confirmation that we know we're not losing our minds. You know, like I said, the internet will convince you that you live on a different planet, but when you walk outside, you're like, well, I'm still on Earth. Is the internet on a different planet or am I on a different planet? You know, right now, they pretend that social media and the internet connects people, but we've never been so disconnected. You know, I actually have a new company that's opening in a few months that just connects people with individuals for short periods of time, but we have to get back to that. This whole being disconnected it's not healthy. I mean, our society is sick. We're barely beginning treatment right now with purging the cutting the cancer, cutting the infection out that's making us sick. We're cutting it down by cutting out the media and its funding that's making us that's giving us the sickness. Do me a favor, like and subscribe, Safe and Effective Podcast, or follow me at Right Wing Rico. The YouTube page, the link is in the bio. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on X. If you're watching this on X right now, thank you for watching. We're on Twitch also. That's where I'm just doing backup videos to post. We don't really have anybody on there watching. We don't really know how to advertise to those people, but we're just making these videos, just getting our views out there and adding to the conversation. Since again, some of the people that are your favorite people that are on TV might not be there pretty soon because some of them complied. You know, it's not popular to say that you complied, but secretly they did, and you know they don't want to tell anybody. I know people that are denying it now that I remember when they put the picture in their Facebook bio. So anyway, I'm throwing my hat in the ring. So I'm here. I'll be back with another episode that's it's not necessarily YouTube friendly, but it is a topic we want to talk about, but it'll be exclusively on X and Rumble only. Not going to be on Twitch or YouTube because of the censorship. Okay, thank you. Like and subscribe, follow, and I'll see you guys shortly. And remember, FU to the World Economic Forum, the World Health Organization, and FU to Klaus Schwab. Thank you.
I've been needing to find a new apartment, which has not been easy with credit as bad as mine. Luckily, I found cosigning.com. They connected me with a cosigner who helped me get my dream apartment for me and my dog. I just paid a small fee and was able to move in fast. Get the cosigner you need for the apartment you want. Check out cosigning.com today.